There are 339 books in the Rory Gilmore Reading Challenge, and I'm going to read all of them, and I mean every single last one of them. The Reading Challenge includes all of the books that Rory Gilmore read or talked about during the run of the highly popular mid-2000s TV series Gilmore Girls. Now, to put an additional spin on the challenge, I'm going to read the books in random order, so stay until the end of the video where we spin the wheel to find out what our next book in the challenge is going to be. So today we have book 6 in the challenge. We have an absolute classic. We have Hamlet by William Shakespeare. It is my very first Shakespeare as well as my first stage play, I would say, except for maybe Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. But other than that, it's my very first classic. It's my first William Shakespeare. It's my first play. So I was very excited to get into it. For me, all I know basically about Hamlet is, the famous quote, "to be or not to be." But other than that, I was not really sure what I was expecting. So let's see what I thought about the book. As always, please do let us know in the comments below if you know where Hamlet was mentioned by Rory Gilmore in the show. I guess it was somewhere when she was probably at Chilton and they had it in a class of English literature or something, but do let me know if you know better. I would love to hear that. So I was worried about the difficulty level of reading Shakespeare. I've never read something at that level, and I did look into a little bit of the different versions that were available for Hamlet. I did end up reading the Gutenberg version that I found online for free. And the Gutenberg version basically starts with an introduction where they say, okay, we try to keep this version as close to the original as they can. So basically it carries all the spelling mistakes which they say are not really mistakes. So for example, what happens a lot in the book is that the V is being spelled as a U, or the other way around, that the U is being spelled as a V. Things like that happen quite a lot. And the reason given for that is that during the time printing was very expensive and letters were very expensive. So often at times they would substitute certain letters that they were running out of with similar letters that they still had available, as far as I understood. So that made the first few pages of reading Hamlet for me very challenging. But I did feel that you start, to get into it. It's always the same substitutions and the same patterns occurring again and again. So it gets easier after some time. You can adapt to it quite fast and quite quickly, I believe. However, I do feel that I would most likely benefit from a rereading of a cleaned up version. And I know those versions are out there. So I do think I might do that at some point. Because anyway, I believe this is the sort of book or play that you can still explore a lot further in a second and possibly even a third reading. So I might do that when I get some time. Now, the story, of course, it's a classic stage play. There's a lot of themes, very heavy themes, like it's about love, it's about relationship, it's about guilt, it's about power, and it's about all of those themes that come with a tragedy centered around the royal family, I guess. So Hamlet by William Shakespeare is about Prince Hamlet, who recently lost his father, King Hamlet. King Hamlet just died recently at the beginning of the story. And King Hamlet's brother, Claudius, basically took over both his crown as well as his widow and now new wife of King Claudius at the beginning of the book. There's something, people feel a little bit fishy about how quick everything happened. And then one night there is a ghost in the form of the deceased King Hamlet showing up around the grounds. And a few nights after that, that same ghost is also showing himself to Prince Hamlet. and is telling Prince Hamlet, hey, I did not just die, I was actually murdered, I was assassinated by my brother, I was assassinated by King Claudius, and I want you to revenge me. And that's basically the plot and the setup for this story about that royal family in Denmark. For me, I was expecting, a classic story to be a little bit more abstract, I guess, but it's actually a very accessible story, and just, about relationships and what happens in that family, basically. So I guess that's also a reason why the story survived so well over time and holds up until today, I guess. So for me, as I mentioned, it was only the second time I read a stage play. And one of the things that I did notice is that it's very difficult to get into it because there's so many characters being introduced on the very first few pages. And because everything is dialogue mainly, which I usually like, I don't like too much description and going on about setting up the stage and everything. So I do enjoy a lot of dialogue in any book, basically. But in here, there were so many characters and no description at all that many of the characters felt very similar to me. I guess that's why it's a play. It would be great to go to, London or somewhere and see an actual enactment of this play. I would love to see that. There were a lot of things that struck me as very interesting in the play. One of it was that, the play being written about 400 or more than 400 years ago, there's stories that they were interested at that time that nowadays we are still interested in. So at one point in the story, they are reenacting plays or talking about plays being reenacted, and some of them are about, Troy, or they are about Julius Caesar, and those are characters and stories that we are still reading books and watching movies about to this very day. So that struck me as very interesting. What I was also surprised by is, I was expecting the book to get you thinking. There's a lot of deep themes in there, with the whole contemplation of life and death that Hamlet is basically going through. So there's a lot of story about that gets you thinking about your life as well a little bit. It is a little bit absurd reading this in some sort of dialogue, or sometimes an inner dialogue, if there's just one character on stage, basically, because there's not really, with lacking a description in the book, there's not really any emotion coming up reading a stage play. So, sometimes it goes as far as to, for example, this character dies or this character dies, and then it's just like those two words, and there's no emotion in it at all, because it just doesn't build up in a stage play, because it's just all dialogue, and then you are supposed to get into that stage of actually caring about those characters, which for me was very difficult just reading a play. But I do see how, enacted on stage, it could be very emotional. So there's another reason why I would absolutely love to see a reenactment of Hamlet. One thing that I found a little bit surprising or even astonishing, I might be completely wrong here, but for me, with this ghost character showing up in the story, around, the 1600s, I would not have believed that, a story that has supernatural elements to it could become so popular. So for me, hearing about Hamlet before, I have never heard that there was a supernatural part to it, with this ghost of Hamlet flying around the castle, basically. So that was probably the most surprising part of the whole play for me. So how did I like Hamlet? I liked it quite a lot, actually. So I rated this story play book as a 3 out of 5 stars, which for me is an absolute great read. I would have probably enjoyed it more if it was written in a way like a novel, that you could actually, build up some emotions. But I was surprised by how accessible it was, because I was really worried about difficulty level of the book before reading this. So I was very surprised and happy to find out that it was quite an easy read. It's a short read, and it's, you know, now having read Hamlet, it's one of the books or one of the stories that you always hear about, and you feel you just should know what it is about. So I'm glad that I got to read it in this challenge. Let me know what you guys thought about Hamlet. I did enjoy it. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts on this play. And have any of you maybe seen a reenactment of the story somewhere on stage? Yeah, and you all know what is coming now, guys. So we are now selecting our next book for the challenge. Please, if you stayed until now, do give this video a like, subscribe to the channel for more videos in the Rory Gilmore Reading Challenge. Okay, so as always, we have our little spinning wheel here, showing the remaining 333 books that I still have to read in the challenge. So without further ado, let's spin the wheel and see what we get as our next book in the challenge. Something good, please. Something easy, something simple. A nice novel would be great. Let's see, what do we get? What do we get? The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test by Tom Wolfe. Are you kidding me? What is that? Is that really in the challenge? I want to know where she had that book in the series. The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test by Tom Wolfe. What is that even? Is that non-fiction? I don't know. Let's find out in the next video. I hope this isn't gonna be a rough read in the next week. All right, see you guys. Bye bye.